Hello, everyone. This is Anna Pacheco with Santa Fe 101. My guest this afternoon is Lance Eaton from Exit Realty in Los Alamos. Lance, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes, you do, Anna.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. So you're actually my first interview from Los Alamos County. So, I don't know much about the county, so I'm hoping that you can shed light on some of the pros and cons of wanting to live in the area. And so tell me a little bit, how long have you been selling real estate up in Los Alamos?
So I've been selling real estate in Los Alamos for just about 5 years now.
Okay.
I've lived in Los Alamos for almost 26 years.
Were you once employed with the lab, or how did you come
I
about?
was. I mean, that's so Los Alamos National Lab obviously is the biggest employer, and the main reason people move to Los Alamos is that they joined the lab. When I left Texas A&M, I have degrees in nuclear engineering, and this is one of the hot spots for nuclear engineers to come and work. So I worked for about 12 years at Los Alamos National Laboratory.
And so did you work on like kind of top secret projects? I know a lot of people that are employed by the lab now, they're actually doing research on curing cancer or working on climate change issues. So not everything that goes on at the Los Alamos National Lab anymore, from what I understand, is just about
Yeah.
working on nuclear warfare.
Right. Very true, very true. But I did come out of more of the secret side of the lab. I did more supporting intelligence community work. I had the opportunity to do a lot of initial work after 9/11, when we were looking at terrorist capabilities and stuff like that. So it was very rewarding and very interesting work.
And so did you retire from the lab and you said, I love Los Alamos, I want to stay here, but maybe I should do something to keep busy, or what?
Yeah, well, so I didn't retire. So I had an option to go work for a software company. So I went and traveled the country and even the world some in selling enterprise software to big companies that are, across across the country, like Nike and a bunch of mining companies and telecom companies. And it's very fascinating. I got to meet a ton of people, but I was on the road quite a bit. And so I did that for roughly 10 years before I chose to transfer and stay in Los Alamos and join the real estate market.
And what made you want to stay in Los Alamos?
So my wife still works at the laboratory.
Okay.
So she's a nuclear engineer as well, and still works here at Los Alamos National Laboratory. So she did that. She still works there. So it's been consistent ever since I left the lab. And then we had two kids here, and Los Alamos was a great spot to raise the boys. And they've, since graduated, and one of them's still here. The other one's off in school.
And what made you want to do real estate? I mean, being a nuclear engineer and now selling
Yeah.
houses, how does that come about?
Great question. Great question. So my mother has been selling real estate for 40 years. And she owned a real estate office, still owns one in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. So after leaving the software world, I said, it's a logical fit. And with mom being in the business, it was a great resource to have. She's not licensed here in New Mexico, but she actually, after I got licensed and started selling, because of her association with Exit Realty and what I saw, I actually opened up our own Exit Realty office here with her support here in Los Alamos.
And in terms of real estate in Los Alamos, I think it's similar to Santa Fe in the sense that it's very expensive. And it's even more finite than it is here. I mean, here we have a very low inventory of houses for sale now, but we're larger. And
Yeah.
but Los Alamos, really, it's a finite entity. I mean, they're not building a lot more there, and so
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that.
So great point. So one of the things you have to understand about Los Alamos is we're kind of up here on the mountain, right? And we're surrounded by national forest or Pueblo land or Department of Energy land. So we don't have a lot of area just to grow and build new subdivisions. We've had a couple subdivisions come on in the past years, and we have a new one right now down in White Rock. But the majority of the houses that we have on the market have been around for a while. For instance, some of them are in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and people upgrade them, become on the market. So today in Los Alamos, as we speak, we have 26 houses in all of Los Alamos County on the market. So
And
as you were saying, very fine.
what is the median cost of those houses?
So we continue, just like Santa Fe, the prices continue to rise. So far in 2020, the average sold price is about $412,000.
Well, that's actually lower than Santa Fe. I thought it would possibly be. We're about 535,000, if you can
Okay.
believe that right now.
Yeah. So we don't have as many probably high-end locations and horse ranches and in big facilities, big homes like that. There's only really one or two different neighborhoods where you can actually have over an acre of land. So we're limited in that type of scope of houses.
And I take it, since Los Alamos only became a county in 1949, that you probably don't have a lot of like old adobe structures, or do they build with adobe up there?
No, we do a lot of stucco, but we don't have the old stuff like you guys have. The oldest part we have would be what was part of the boys' school before the lab, before the government took over Los Alamos. So we do have Fuller Lodge and some of the houses that were associated with the boys' school back before, it became part of the Manhattan Project. So we don't have a lot of older houses. I mean, as you mentioned, most things here didn't exist until 1948. So that's about as old as we go.
And for those of you who might be watching, the Los Alamos Ranch School for Boys, it began in 1917 and it stopped in 1943. And, and what had happened was that Percival Keith, he was a chemical engineer, had his sons attend the Los Alamos Ranch School for Boys. It was a very elite school, primarily for young men and boys from back east. And then later on, Robert Oppenheimer, he actually had property up near Cowles, New Mexico, near Pecos. So he knew about it. So when this whole thing happened with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, people in the know that were thinking about, where should they build a secret nuclear lab, they were familiar with, it wasn't even called Los Alamos, and it was just referred to as the Hill. They were familiar with this area because, of the Los Alamos Ranch School for Boys, and because of eminent domain, it did shut down in 1943. So just a little historical background there. I want to ask you, so you were actually in Los Alamos, I think it was in the year 2000, wasn't it, the Sierra Grande fire, where basically the entire city was evacuated? You were there for that.
I was here, and we were indeed evacuated. I actually there's two communities in Los Alamos County. There's Los Alamos community in White Rock. We're still part of the same school district and so all the same county. So I was fortunate at that point. I lived in White Rock, but we were still evacuated. So my house, wasn't in danger. But I think we lost over something like 220 houses in Sierra Grande in 2000. So it was a major issue and a major community rebuild that had to happen.
I actually had a friend who lost everything in that, her house,
Yeah.
everything she had. So then in terms of real estate, all of it. So when these houses were rebuilt, did it take by about the year 2003, or how long did it take to rebuild those houses?
So so there are still some vacant lots that exist that were the houses burned, but for the most part, people rebuilt over the 2 or 3 years right after the fire. But as you can imagine, with that many houses trying to be rebuilt, trying to find construction labor and everything, and contractors to get your house built was quite the task at the time. It's very interesting. You can drive through the neighborhoods that are kind of on the edge of town and where the fire came in, and it's really obvious, which houses, anything new was obviously, that lot was burned during the fire versus the older existing houses that were probably built around the 50s and 60s that are intermingled in the houses today.
And did a lot of those owners, did they rebuild and stay there, or did they just, rebuild and then sell to other people?
I think the majority of the people stayed. It's a great community, and the lab stayed open. So we just had to find other places for people to live until they could rebuild. But if you look at the real estate market, what you'll see is we had a lot of what we call a quad, so a fourplex home or a duplex that were on these lots. So when that quad burned, you had to figure out how to rebuild houses for 4 different families. They had to agree, come up with a plan and agree and, fit something back into that footprint. So, that was a challenge as well. And sometimes people would take a complete duplex lot and, if they own both sides, just build a single family home there or something.
And are there apartment buildings in Los Alamos? Because what do people do? I think if I'm not mistaken, in the last 2 or 3 years, the lab has done a major process. They've had a process of hiring a lot more people. I guess they got funding or something. And I think I had read that there was this real dilemma. It's like, where are these people going to live? Because even, down the hill in Espanola or in the Powaka area, there is a housing shortage there. So I think I had heard that maybe they were thinking of building a new development in Rio Rancho, which is south of Los Alamos, near Albuquerque, to accommodate people that now work at the lab. Can you tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about, the housing
So,
shortage in that?
so sure. I mean, with 26 houses on the market and the lab's still hiring, over 1,000 people a year, it's driven up our prices. Our average home price sold has gone up about a little over 12% year over year for the past 3 years because of the lab hiring. So what's kind of created the problem is we can't really build. There's one new subdivision being built. Rayleigh Homes is building Mirador, 161 houses down in White Rock. So that is helping. They're building as we speak. There are other developments that are being talked about, are being planned. So that will relieve, some of the need. But I think if you look at everything that's being planned, or at least even starting being built, I think the numbers are something like maybe 400 units, which still leaves us needing, hundreds more to fit everybody in. So people tend to retire from Los Alamos. And it's such a nice place to live. They don't actually leave town when they retire. So
That was
we
my next question. Do people actually stay there after they stop working at the lab?
actually stay, and a lot of people who really enjoy the job in this as a career still go in and work as fellow scientists and stuff like that, because it's what they love and it's what they know, so they don't leave. So part of the issue is, how do we get for instance, retirees out of a large home up here, for instance, on North Mesa, Barranca Mesa, a 3,000 square foot house, into something smaller, that they're going to enjoy and want to be in, so that it frees up some of the housing for some of the new families moving to town.
And so would you say basically people that move to Los Alamos, it's because one of the, either the husband or the wife has a job at the lab? I mean, do people move to Los Alamos just to move to Los Alamos, or would you say for the most part, it's
Well,
because they have employment?
I obviously, the lab is the big draw. The majority of the people move here for that. But we do have people that move here because it is a great place to live, because they enjoy the climate, they enjoy the snow, the canyons, the mountains, the hiking. Los Alamos is ranked in a lot of publications as, a top 10 best small town to live in the United States. I think U.S. World Report, News and World Report ranked us as the top healthiest town to live in back in September of this year in all the United States. So that's a big attraction, right? The school system is fantastic. School system's fantastic. There's a ton to do. We have a lot of parks, mountains everywhere. We're close to Bandelier National Park. We're close to Valle Caldera, um, up in the Jemez Mountains. So we're surrounded by beauty. So it's a great place. I recently
You have a little ski basin there. I've been to your ski basin, and I don't know if you still have it, but years ago you had the sweetest little outdoor ice skating rink. Is that still there?
still have it. It's actually even been upgraded, so it's even nicer than it was. So we do have an outdoor skating rink, which is great. Kind of like pond hockey, right? And then we do have Pajarito Mountain for skiing and festivals and bike racing and mountain bikes and everything associated with it. So there's a lot to offer that
It is
really
kind of
draws.
very idyllic in the sense that it's kind of like a Norman Rockwell painting. It is a very special place to live. And I've heard that the schools are incredible because the children that go there are the children of scientists and
Right.
physicists. And And then for those watching, I've also heard that, what is the zip code of Los Alamos?
87544 and 87547.
I've heard that those two zip codes have the highest in terms of income. They have the highest income per capita, not just in New Mexico, but perhaps even in the Southwest because of the lab. But
Yeah.
I asked, are they building, or are there any apartment buildings for people up there?
So there is one complex being built right now. It looks like there's a little ways to go, and it is actually going to focus on 55 and over for apartments. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, maybe that will help provide a great place to move out of the bigger single family houses and provide something for the retirement community
And
to gather around and really like.
is White Rock a little less expensive? And how far is White Rock? I know it's just down the hill, but I
It's
mean, how
about,
far
yeah,
is White Rock from the center of Los Alamos?
it's probably about 7 miles from the center of Los Alamos. So Los Alamos sits at about a little over 7,200 feet elevation, and you go about 7 miles down one of the mesas, and you get to White Rock, which is about 5,400 feet elevation. So it's a little bit warmer in the summer and in the winter. Doesn't get quite as much snow. Um, Home prices they may be a tad cheaper, but for the most part, they're pretty similar. Especially with the new subdivision that Rayleigh Homes is working on. Those are some nice new houses, and they're some of them are very large. So those home prices are actually, for new construction, are higher than a lot of the other home prices.
What are they averaging? Do you know?
So they have several different phases going on. The first phase had some smaller lots. So those houses were between like 470 and 550 for single family units. The current phase is their luxury phase. So the lots are a little bit bigger and the houses are bigger. And those houses they range in the 600, 6 to 700.
And then there's a third stage.
There is, and then they're going to go back to some smaller lots. So right now, I think the first phase in Mirador was about 27 houses. I think this premium luxury phase is about 35. And then they have, a total of 161, I think is the number that they're shooting for. So they're just working their way through the subdivision.
And are you actively selling any of those houses, or have they been sold up already? Or
So there are probably, out of the 26 houses we have on the market today, 6 or 7 of them are Mirador houses. So, but they're still being built, so they're not quite ready to move in. But yes, absolutely. As an exit realty broker, we can take our buyers to Rayleigh Homes. And I've had several buyers in the past year buy down in Rayleigh Homes. So as part of as a real estate expert, we have the ability to sell everything in town, including those homes as well.
and let me ask you, now a lot, kind of the norm now is a lot more people are moving to New Mexico because they can work remotely. And I know I've been up to Bandelier, and how is the internet up there? I mean, is it, if somebody's if they truly make their living, working remotely, they have got to have good Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's great. For the most part, we don't have any issues. We have several different carriers that you can pick from because, most of the laboratory is working remote right now as well. So we're in the same situation. And, it has not been a limiting factor up here in Los Alamos.
Okay. And would you say of the how many lab employees actually commute every day from other parts of the state? I mean, not everybody can live in Los Alamos just because.
No, you're absolutely correct. And there was a big housing study done to look at exactly those numbers. How many people live in Los Alamos? How many live down in Pewaukee or Espanola in the valley? How many people live in Santa Fe? And how many people live in Rio Rancho or Bernalillo and commute up? And the numbers are, I don't have them in front of me, I apologize, but the numbers are, probably only 25% of the people that work at Los Alamos live in Los Alamos. The rest are commuting in. There's even been talk about perhaps putting another bypass in or a bridge over the Rio Grande so that we could get to Rio Rancho quicker, where there's more affordable housing and more options for housing. But I think that would be a ways away.
But I take it that because the lab is, it's such a vibrant place to work economically, that that kind of like has there's good restaurants, there's probably shops. I mean, all the, there's businesses would feed off of the lab, correct? In terms of, places to eat, places to shop.
Correct. The, you know, very similar to our residential real estate market, the commercial real estate market has been booming as well. With the lab trying to buy more space, more subcontractors coming in, and everybody looking for space, those prices have gone up as well. But also as we grow as a town and we get, as many people that come to Los Alamos during the day to work, all of the restaurants in a normal COVID-free society, the restaurants at lunch are absolutely packed, lunch and breakfast. At dinner, we don't have as many of the restaurants that serve dinner as do lunch. Because a lot of people leave the hill, but we do have some fantastic restaurants, and we actually, always encouraging other people to come up and open up more restaurants.
Yeah, pre and COVID, it's a vibrant community.
Yeah.
We're about out of time here. Is there something else you wanted to add to, your experience as a realtor, or what people might want to know, or why they would contact you directly if they're looking at moving to Los Alamos or White Rock?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic place to live, first and foremost, right? I mean, that's why people are attracted here, and the lab has helped, and the community is fantastic, and the county does a great job. So, wonderful place to live with the schools and the outdoor and the housing. So, the housing market is tight. So, I would encourage you to reach out to a real estate professional. You're going to need help. And how do you understand it? How do we navigate when there's only 26 houses on the market? What should I expect? There's not as much new construction, so think about that before you come. But I would love to help you walk through the process and understand what it takes to find a house that you're comfortable in, meets your family's needs, and provides a great place to live.
And if they can't live in Los Alamos, what would be in terms of vicinity? What would be their next?
Yeah, so the next closest would be Pewaukee or Espanola Valley. And there's a wide variety of, houses around there. So for instance, there's more land. La Mesilla is a great community, a horse kind of community with 3 and 4 acre lots and bigger houses. And all the way from Nambe and Chimayo all the way up to Santa Fe. There's some beautiful houses nestled in the mountains all the way throughout there. So those are other great places to look.
Okay, well, good. Well, then, we can probably have you back on the show, in early 2021 to talk about other aspects of living and trying, if you're going to work in Los Alamos, where you personally can be of help to these families. How's that?
That would be fantastic. Thank you very much.